Well, let's just be real here. If you clicked on this video, you're probably dealing with a snail situation that's gotten way out of hand. And honestly, same. These tiny little invaders multiply faster than toxic trends, and before you know it, your beautiful aquarium looks more decimated than your bank account after a Whole Foods run. But don't worry, bestie. We're about to rank some absolute units that'll help you reclaim your tank from the gastropod apocalypse. Okay, so Yo Loaches are basically the middle managers of aquatic pest control. They'll get the job done, but they're gonna need proper accommodation first. These fish have more workplace demands than a Gen Z employee asking for mental health days and oat milk in the office fridge. These stripy comedians got their name from the YO pattern on their bodies, which, honestly, that crap slaps harder than any designer logo. They max out at about 6 inches, so they're not gonna take over your tank completely. Their slender bodies are perfect for getting into tight spots and rooting out those little snails. Giving them that lean, mean, snail hunting machine energy. Yeah. Anyways, here's where it gets spicy. Some aquarists report that their Yo Loaches straight up refuse to eat snails. It's giving, I don't see color, but for gastropods. These fish will literally ignore a snail buffet if they're being fed to, well, by their human servants. Yeah. So they're basically saying, why would I work when you're already providing for me? Which, I get it. When they do decide to clock in, though, a Yo Loach will typically demolish 1 to 2 large snails before calling it quits. If we're talking tiny snails under an inch, they might go ham and eat 3 to 5 of those little suckers. So, I mean, they're not exactly speed running through your snail problem, but they're consistent workers when they're not being dramatic. The thing that actually is pretty cool is that Yo Loaches are selective eaters. They'll leave your expensive mystery snails alone, but absolutely terrorize the pest snails. It's giving responsible pest control energy. They know the difference between the snails you actually want and the ones that are basically aquatic cockroaches. But here's the plot twist. These fish are social butterflies who need a squad. A lonely Yo Loach becomes a depressed Yo Loach. And honestly, we've all been there. They need groups and hiding spots because apparently even fish need their safe spaces now. This B-tier performance makes sense when you consider they need at least 55 gallons to flex properly. Oh boy, Pea Puffers. Literally the definition of small but mighty energy. These little chaos agents max out at barely an inch long, but they pack more murderous intent than a true crime podcast host discussing their latest and favorite serial killer. Pea Puffers are basically the aquatic equivalent of that friend who looks innocent but definitely Googled how to hide a body at 3 a.m. They're carnivorous little demons who will systematically hunt down every single snail in your tank with the efficiency of someone organizing their Spotify playlists at 2 a.m. But get this, some Pea Puffers will only eat snails and literally refuse everything else. Bloodworms? No thanks. Brine shrimp? Pass. Fancy frozen foods? Not interested. They want snails or they want nothing, and honestly, that level of commitment to their brand is, well, it's kind of iconic. The feeding guidelines are pretty specific too, about 3 pond snails per puffer, or maybe 1 to 2 ram's horn snails if they're feeling fancy. Some dedicated aquarists have actually developed techniques where they never directly feed their puffers at all. They just maintain a sustainable snail population that naturally replenishes itself using Malaysian trumpet snails. That's some next level ecosystem management that would make even the most environmentally conscious influencer weep with pride. Unfortunately, the drawback with these fish is that they're absolute psychos in a community tank. They'll just maim fish for the plot and out of boredom. Fortunately, yeah, that sucks given their ability to wipe out snail populations. Some of these fish will literally go on a hunger strike because they're too anxious to eat when first introduced. That's given sensitive artists who only creates when the vibes are exactly right. But when they finally decide to work, this A-tier performance is absolutely unmatched at their snail-destroying ability. If you want something that's not too big, not too aggressive, but still absolutely demolishes snails, dwarf chain loaches are literally, chef's kiss. These little guys are the perfect middle ground between completely useless and way too extra for my setup. At about 2.5 inches long, they're perfect for smaller tanks where bigger loaches would be completely inappropriate. Their pointy snouts are basically engineered by evolution to be snail destruction devices. Whoever designed these fish really said, let's make something that can fit perfectly into snail shells, and honestly, we respect the dedication to the craft. The coolest part is how their heads are shaped to fit almost precisely into those snail shells. There are actually reports of these fish climbing into shells and then getting stuck because they can't reverse out. It's giving eyes bigger than your stomach, but make it aquatic and a little bit concerning. While they probably won't mess with your larger ornamental snails, they will absolutely harass them, giving that annoying little sibling energy where they're not actually hurting you, but they're definitely making your life unpleasant. In smaller tanks especially, this harassment can stress out bigger snails, to the point where they basically give up on life. The downside is these fish are expensive and you need a whole squad of them. We're talking at least 6 to 10 individuals. And at $7 to $15 per fish, your wallet's gonna feel that real quick. Basically trying to collect Pokemon cards, but every card costs the same as a fancy coffee drink. And they're also surprisingly active for their size. These little guys are constantly zipping around the tank doing their own thing, but they're not technically schooling fish. More of a friend group, where everyone hangs out together but also has their own individual chaos going on. They'll scavenge for leftovers and control snail outbreaks, all while keeping your tank clean and your ecosystem balanced. Pure S-tier efficiency right here. Okay, so Gourami are basically that coworker who does just enough not to get fired. They're naturally found throughout Southeast Asia, and they're super popular in the aquarium trade, mostly because they're absolutely gorgeous. But when it comes to snail control, they're giving, I'll do it when I feel like it energy. These fish will occasionally remember they're supposed to eat snails, usually right around the time you're considering replacing them with something more effective. It's giving they have some kind of sixth sense when they're about to get performance reviewed. Gouramis are more interested in being the main character of your tank rather than doing the dirty work. They spend most of their time building elaborate bubble nests and looking photogenic for your Instagram posts, which fair enough. I mean, we all got our priorities, right? The thing is, they're beautiful fish with complex personalities and interesting behaviors. They're just not going to be your snail control heroes. If you want Gouramis, get them because you actually want Gouramis, not because you think they're going to solve your pest problem. It's hiring someone for their looks and then being surprised when they're not great at the actual job. Definitely C-tier performance here. All right, let's talk about bala sharks, because these guys are the definition of seem like a good idea at the time. You know what they are? They're that trendy cryptocurrency you bought at 3 a.m. or maybe that impulse decision to get bangs during quarantine. It starts out promising, but quickly becomes a situation you need to explain to people. Bala sharks are absolutely effective snail-eating fish when they're small. The problem is they don't stay small at all. These fish start out as cute little 3-inch babies that could easily be mistaken for community fish, but then they grow to absolute units that can reach 14 to 16 inches long. That's bigger than some laptops, just to put things in perspective. When they're babes, they are totally chill with small fish, shrimp, and snails, but as they grow, their dietary preferences expand to basically anything that fits in my mouth is fair game. So those neon tetras you thought were safe, well, yeah, they were, but now they're basically expensive snacks. The real kicker is the tank size requirements. These fish need at least 100 gallons, and that's just the starting point. Plus, they're schooling fish, so you can't have just one. You need at least 3 to 5 of these monsters, which means you're looking at a tank that's basically the size of a hot tub. There are actually reports of stressed bala sharks in inadequate tanks becoming aggressive towards snails, not because they're hungry, but basically because they're having a mental breakdown from being cramped. It's road rage, but for fish. They'll ram into the glass, attack innocent snails, and generally make everyone's life miserable because they're living in what's essentially aquatic solitary confinement. The tragedy here is that pet stores regularly sell these fish to people who have no idea what they're getting into. It's like selling someone a tiger cub without mentioning it's going to grow up to be, a tiger. So many of these beautiful fish end up in situations where they can't thrive, and honestly, it's kind of heartbreaking. This is D-tier territory because of how impractical they are for most setups. Alright, so you're so fed up with snails, you literally decide to fight fire with fire. Enter Assassin Snails, the ultimate plot twist in the aquarium management system. These aren't fish, but honestly, neither is your sanity after dealing with a full-blown snail invasion, so we're rolling with it. These little bumblebee-striped assassins are basically the aquatic versions of hiring a hitman, except it's completely legal and they work for bloodworms. They got this whole undercover operation going where they burrow into your substrate with just their little siphon tubes sticking out, looking all innocent until BAM! Some unsuspecting bladder snail wanders by and gets absolutely obliterated. What's actually wild is their hunting techniques. They got this proboscis, which is basically a biological drinking straw of death that they use to literally slurp the meat right out of the other snail's shells. Like a horror movie vibe, but the best possible way for your tank maintenance. I mean, you weren't gonna do it, right? A crew of just 15 assassin snails managed to demolish 200 pest snails in 2 weeks. That is the kind of efficiency that would make corporate managers weep with joy. And unlike literally every other snail species that reproduces faster than Kardashian drama, assassin snails aren't hermaphrodites. You need both male and female snails to make babies, so they won't turn your solution to a whole new problem. You following? For smaller tanks, we're talking 10 to 20 gallons, you can start with just 2 to 3 of these aquatic mercs. They're perfect for setups where adding actual fish would mess up your bio load or where space is tighter than your jeans after the holiday eats. Really, the only catch is that they might occasionally gang up on larger snails that you actually want to keep, but mostly they stick to terrorizing the pest species. This strategic approach and controlled reproduction definitely earns them S-tier status. Oh boy, African cichlids. These fish are basically the workplace where everyone thinks that they're the star of their own reality show. And honestly, some of them actually are kind of right. When it comes to snail control, you got your overachievers and you got your, well, let's call them accidental contributors. The Snail Crusher Hap is literally the employee of the month every month when it comes to intentional snail destruction. These absolute units will actively hunt down snails and crush their shells with the enthusiasm of somebody popping bubble wrap during a stressful Zoom call. They got these specialized teeth that can crack through snail shells that would make other fish give up and order DoorDash instead. And you got the rest of the African cichlid family, who treat snail eating more as a happy accident than a career goal. They're just out here living their best life, being territorial and dramatic, when suddenly they bump into a snail and think, well, might as well. It's given task failed successfully energy. They're not trying to be pest control, but sometimes chaos works in your favor. The thing about African cichlids, though, they come with more attitude than a teenager who just discovered TikTok, so be fair warned. They're territorial, they're aggressive, and they have very specific water chemistry needs. They want their pH between 7.5 and 9, which might not vibe with your other tank inhabitants, who prefer something more neutral. Plus, they're not exactly community friendly unless everyone in the tank can hold their own in what's basically an underwater fight club. They're definitely effective when they decide to participate in snail control, but their diva requirements and aggressive tendencies make them more of a specialized solution. These guys are going to swim on into C-tier performance, because while they can absolutely do the job, you're signing up for a whole personality-driven ecosystem that might not be what you bargained for. Now, my boys, Comet Goldfish, are basically the aquatic equivalent of that friend who somehow is always ending up in the most ridiculous situations, but somehow makes everything work out. These fish approach snail control with the subtlety of a bulldozer, and honestly, sometimes that's exactly what you need. They'll slurp snails down faster than you can say, "Where did my carefully planned aquascape go?" These fish have the eating restraint of someone at a buffet after a week of salad, which is to say absolutely none. Any snail that fits in their mouth is basically signing its own eviction notice from life. But if it wasn't enough, here's where things get spicy. Goldfish are basically the party guests who solve one problem while creating 17 new ones. Sure, they'll demolish your snail population, but they'll also redecorate your entire tank without asking for permission. Plants uprooted, substrate redistributed according to their own artistic vision. Tank decorations? Yeah, now they're scattered across the bottom in what they probably consider feng shui. They also have a growth trajectory of a startup that just got venture capital funding. They'll outgrow your tank faster than you can say, maybe I should have done more research. But they also need unheated tanks, which, well, that makes them about as compatible with tropical fish as pineapple on pizza is with Italians. The real kicker? They're freaking messy. How is one fish producing this much waste? Yeah, your filtration system will be working overtime just to keep up with their biological output. But you know what? Sometimes brute force is exactly what a situation calls for, even if it comes with chaos as a side effect. That right there, that's solid C-tier energy. Now, if you want to talk about a fish that does take their job seriously, zebra loaches are basically the overachiever who always volunteer for extra credit. These gorgeous, striped little legends maintain their beautiful gray, gold, and dark brown patterns their entire lives, because apparently, even fish care about their personal brand now. At just 4 inches long, they're way more practical than their massive clown loach cousins who basically need their own zip code. But don't let their size fool you. These fish have specialized grinding teeth that can crunch through snail shells with the efficiency of someone going through their ex's social media after a breakup. The coolest thing about zebra loaches, though? They make audible clicking sounds when they eat snails. It's like their little victory celebration. And honestly, we stand a fish that knows how to acknowledge their own accomplishments. They will systematically hunt down every single pest snail with the dedication of someone who's organizing their Spotify playlist by mood and decade. The details, baby. But here's where things get, well, interesting. Zebra loaches occasionally have this side hustle where they'll nibble on your plants. It's not malicious or anything, they're just curious. Maybe they think your carefully selected aquatic vegetation just needs a little artistic pruning. It's giving, I'm just trying to help energy while completely missing the mark. But they are peaceful community fish that get along well with others. However, they absolutely need to be kept in groups of at least 5. A lonely zebra loach is basically that coworker who starts talking to their houseplants because they need social interaction. When they're happy, though, they'll devour any snail in sight while maintaining their gorgeous appearance and generally being manageable for the average aquarist. That right there is definitely A-tier performance, with just a tiny asterisk for the occasional unauthorized landscaping. Now, as we mentioned before, clown loaches. These guys are basically the golden retrievers of the loach world. They're adorable, they're incredibly effective at what they do, but with space requirements that'll make your wallet file for bankruptcy protection. These fish have quite the reputation as snail-eating legends, and honestly, they've earned every bit of it. You'll see them patrolling the substrate before diving under to hunt down snails that think they're safe in their little hidey holes. They're underwater detectives who never miss a case, except their specialty is gastropod elimination rather than solving crimes. When they're not actively hunting snails, they're peaceful community fish that get along with basically everybody. It's giving gentle giant who could absolutely wreck you but chooses kindness instead. But here's the plot twist that nobody warns you about. These adorable orange and black stripes are basically a marketing trick by nature. These fish start out as cute little babies that could fit in a coffee mug, but they grow into absolute units that can reach over a foot long. It's like adopting what you think is a hamster, finding out it's actually a bear cub. They also don't stay bright orange forever, which is honestly, well, that's false advertising if you ask me. As they mature, they become more of a dusky sunset gold color and their stripes fade to brown. It's still beautiful, but like expecting a sports car and getting a very, very nice sedan instead. The real kicker though, they need to be kept in groups, and they require tanks that are basically the size of a small swimming pool. We're talking serious space requirement that most home aquarists just can't accommodate long term. These are amazing fish that are incredibly effective at snail control, but unless you're planning to convert your living room into an aquarium showroom, well, they're definitely more practical options. That's D-tier territory purely because of their impracticality for most setups. Now, bristlenose plecos are basically the aquarium equivalent of a 401k. Absolutely useless in the short term, but potentially valuable if you're willing to wait several years for them to actually do anything useful. These fish take the concept of playing the long game to a whole new level, because when they're young, bristlenose plecos will literally swim past snails with the indifference of someone scrolling past ads on YouTube. They're focused on algae and looking vaguely prehistoric, completely ignoring the gastropod buffet happening right in front of them. It's giving my job energy in most frustrating possible ways. But when something magical happens around their growth spurt, well, they just suddenly discover that snails are actually pretty tasty. It's like watching someone realize vegetables don't have to taste awful if you cook them right. Yeah. Once they hit the snail-eating enlightenment, they'll become surprisingly effective at pest control. The thing is, you're basically gambling on your Pleco's character development arc. You'll be dealing with your snail infestation for months, maybe even years, while your Pleco, well, they're off doing Pleco things and growing those weird bristles that make them look like you're cosplaying as an underwater cactus. They are excellent algae eaters, though, so you'll get that dual functionality once they mature. It's like having a roommate who doesn't help with chores initially, but eventually they become the person who deep cleans the entire house. The patience required for this payoff definitely puts them in C tier. They're useful, but the timeline's challenging for most people dealing with an active pest problem. So, there you have it. Your complete guide to ranking snail-eating fish from S-tier legends to D-tier disappointments. Whether you're team Pea Puffer chaos or dwarf chain loach efficiency, the key is matching your choice to your actual setup, not your Pinterest aquarium dreams. Drop a comment below with your snail horror stories or which fish saved your tank from gastropod apocalypse. And listen, if this helped you avoid any aquatic disasters, smash that subscribe button for more brutally honest fish keeping content.